All right, hello everyone. This is Nathan Orgel. As you see by my top of my profile, I should stop talking when I don't know what I'm about to say. As the title says, this is the first unboxing of my book, now in paperback. I just got them delivered, I think, yesterday, and just really excited. It's a special moment as an author to be able to see your name physically in print on something. This has happened to me before. I did publish a book back in 2009, but this is my first chance to do it after having gained a lot more knowledge about what I want to do with my books and just better skill and talent in writing. So, since I published through Amazon, Kindle Direct, got an Amazon box full of 10 books. They're not the first to ever be printed. I did have some galley copies printed, but the first full production version a friend of mine did buy. I still haven't signed it yet. If you're watching this, you know who you are. I'll get around to it eventually. Maybe when COVID cases aren't as high. But this is first one I've pulled out. That's probably going to be flipped. I'm not sure if there's a way I can change that in the broadcast to be legible, but there's the first copy that I've pulled out of Withered Kingdom. It's even got a little picture of me on the back, a little excerpt of my writing. So now that I have some physical copies here in my own presence, I can sell them to people who I know in the area. So if I know you, if you know me, and you want to buy a copy, just let me know. I'm selling them for about $12 a piece. I'm totally willing to sign them. I'm especially interested in signing them and leaving a note so that you can pass it on to a friend or something like that, and expand the knowledge of the book by word of mouth. So, just taking a look at these here. I believe that's all 10 in one box. Looks like it. I am actually quite impressed with the way that these come out. I might have mentioned this when I tried to make a live video before, but failed because I was using my PC and it wasn't collecting my audio right. But now I'm using my phone, and I have a newer phone. So now that I have this phone, I decided to use it. Hopefully my front camera has enough definition to be visible. Hopefully this stack will start to be visible too. But yeah, that's 10 copies of my book presently available, and I hope to print more soon, but that kind of relies on everybody I know wanting to buy more books. So this is the part where I get really shamelessly pluggy. See Zechariah on there. Hi. I'm going to do the wave button. I haven't really done a lot of live stuff before, but thank you whoever's watching. 10 copies of my first book. That's what that looks like. I should probably show the other side. But, hi Bobby. That's first 10 copies right there. I do have much longer hair than the last time you saw me, Bobby. Yeah, $12 if you know me in person. People who might be in Ohio, for example, that want to buy one might have better luck ordering it directly through Amazon. It is available now. Just search Withered Kingdom or search my full name, Nathan Thomas Orgel. You should be able to find it, $12. Hello, more people to say hi to. I've tried to do live videos before and not gotten nearly as many people to see. But yeah, my book is out, $12. It's the beginning of a series that will hopefully be a very long series. Not that I want that to burden anyone, but hey, Dallin, this is fun. It's like being a Twitch streamer. What was I saying? So this is the beginning of a series. A few of my friends have already read through the ebook version of it. It's available on Kindle as well, has been for more than a year now. I am working very diligently on the next book. It's most of the way done already. I am also looking for beta readers that would be interested in reading through kind of chapter by chapter of the second book. If they would like to, let me know if you want to anyway. Send me a message or leave a comment or something on this video if you'd like to be part of beta reading. I'm trying to do everything I can to get some notoriety out there since I have these copies. A few of them are going to be going to local newspapers, just sending them, asking for people in the entertainment section or whatever to review them, or I'm going to take at least 2 to the Oshkosh Public Library, which that's my public library now that I live in Oshkosh. I haven't been to it, but I've seen it from the outside, and it's a really incredible building. It's got like the Greek pillars, and it's super classical looking. Bobby, what medium do you make the most money from? If you're meaning ebook versus physical, I definitely make more money on the physical. But there's no production and there's no delay with the Kindle, so I mean both are good. I definitely make more money on the physical. There's a pretty decent margin. See Aviana, hi, and Melissa, hi, both 2 of my sisters-in-law. All right, good to know, Bobby. Yeah, probably don't ask me to send it to you. I feel like you're going to get it less shipping if you just... Well, I appreciate that, Bobby. You'll get it faster if you order it directly from Amazon versus from me. But people I know personally, I might be able to deliver it to. People I know, I mean, I know you personally, but people in the area, Oshkosh, Appleton, I don't know if I know anyone in Fond du Lac, but maybe all the way up into Green Bay and stuff like that. It's an exciting time. I hope I have some more opportunities to kind of talk about the book and bring it to new audiences. I know not a lot of people read as much as maybe they did around the time that Harry Potter was, there were still new Harry Potter books coming out. But at least a few people I know can spread the word, and maybe I'll even get these into some of the little libraries around town, the little ones that are built that you can like take a book, leave a book sort of thing. Amazon delivers to North Carolina, I'm sure, Melissa. It is fantasy. That's very true, Dallin. It's very high fantasy in the Tolkien sense, but not with as many other races in terms of like orcs and elves and stuff like that. It's pretty much humans. There are giants, and one of the main characters, or the main character's best friend, is a half-giant. That's a very important element of this story, and it's even more important in the next book. So a lot of swords and magic and that sort of thing to kind of scratch the fantasy itch that I haven't really been able to find a lot in books. Right now I'm reading The Wheel of Time. I'm a quarter of the way through the first book, The Eye of the World, and that's finally really scratching that itch for me. But as a lot of writing teachers say, the best thing to write is the book that you want to read, and that's what I'm doing. If I were to call this, or if I were to describe this book to someone, I'd say it's basically the world of Lord of the Rings with a magic system like Avatar: The Last Airbender and a plot like Born Identity. That's kind of a jumble, but the second book is all of that, except the plot changes to kind of Saving Private Ryan, which another Matt Damon, but I feel like that's a pretty good way to explain kind of what the plot is. There's definitely magic, there's definitely swords and fighting and combat, and Dallin says it sounds lit. That's awesome. No one's ever described my book as being lit before. That's an accomplishment. Yeah, so there's the Born Identity stuff is amnesia. The main character starts out with amnesia, and I know that's kind of a overdone thing in fiction, but it sort of plays out the way it does in Born Identity, where he's slowly regaining his memories, not through you know, not through any like straight like scientific explanations for why someone might get their memories back, but it's mystical. It's your classic struggle between good and evil, and there's a really big fight at the end. Two armies clashing against each other to kind of lead into what happens in the next book. But this is half of what was originally going to be one book, which is why the second book is already almost done. Is I wrote the draft of this book and the next book as one solid draft, and I realized better to cut it where it is, and it would be a much thicker book. It would be at least twice as big, if not a little bigger, if I was able to do both at the same time. I mentioned before, like a magic system, kind of like Avatar: The Last Airbender. I would say that that's true if you mix Avatar: The Last Airbender with Full Metal Alchemist. That's probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's one way to describe it. Do the same thing on TikTok. You might get more readership. Yeah, I could. You know what? While I'm here and I've got this all set up, I might just read the prologue for everybody, just to entice people. I hope you're excited to read it. That'd be great. And tell as many people as you know about it, even if they don't really read fantasy. Do you have any recommendations for like managing writing motivation, like the actual writing process? That's a good question, Dallin. The actual writing process, sitting down to write, is best managed as a habit, I think. If you make sure that you plan out when you're going to write, and writing eventually stops being composing text and it becomes editing and eventually it becomes marketing. And that's kind of what I'm struggling with right now, is I'm not spending a lot of time actually making new text. I'm spending a lot more time editing, because I am a what's the term? George R.R. Martin talks about gardener writers and architect writers. I'm a gardener. I sit down and I write, and whatever happens, happens. And that eventually forms into a book. Most of the good quality of it comes out through repetition and through revision and revision and revision. So I don't really use an outline or anything like that. Kind of recentering back onto your question though, Dallin, I guess if you're able to associate writing with more positive emotions, a lot of times writing can be mentally or creatively exhausting or painful for people. I try to think of, whenever I think like what I have to write next, I try to get myself as excited for it as possible and be like, yes, I get to write about that. That's going to be a fun fight or a fun heist moment or a fun, MacGuffin chase, whatever trope might be involved. Having a good setup is also great for writing. I mean, for a long time, I was just writing on a budget laptop, and that's not the most comfortable or easy way to write, but I found that dedicating to challenges like the National Novel Writing Month, happens every November, where you write 50,000 words within the 30 days of November. That's where I get a lot of the bulk of my new content done, and I spend most of the rest of the time doing editing or kind of writing experiments. But when you can really make a habit out of your writing, it does make it easier to continue doing writing. I don't know if you do a lot of writing yourself, Dallin. I know your brother does, and I know you've done some screenplay stuff, but as far as like novel style prose, I'm the type of person where I sit down and I write. Doesn't matter if I have ideas or not. I don't really believe in writer's block, because at any point I can say, a dragon burst into the room, and I can just write there. Even if that's not the idea I want to stick with, I can fix that later. That's why there's multiple drafts. The writing process is one that needs to be disciplined, I feel like. It never becomes like super fun and super exciting. It does wear on someone over a period of time, and I might have someone coming up the stairs in a moment. writing is a definite effort, and the better you get at it, the higher you hold yourself to your standards, your own standards of like what you know is good. And that does kind of make it more difficult to write to a certain extent, but you also know that you're producing something better. The more errors you find in your work, the better you know your work is, because you're able to detect those problems. That probably seems counterintuitive, but that's the way I view it. Because like when I was writing my first book back in 2008 and 2009, or from 2004 until I published it in 2009, I didn't really notice a lot of problems. I didn't really notice a lot of things that were wrong with it. I can go back to it now. There's a lot of problems. There's a lot of things I would not do again. There's a lot of things that I would not have written that way. Just because I hadn't been to college yet, I was 18 years old, and there was a lot of things I had yet to understand and just appreciate about life. And now that I know more about life and more about writing, I've gained so many more experiences. I feel like I can write a better story. And I'm sure in the next 10 years, I'll probably be doing that again, looking back at this book and thinking, why? Why did I even publish it? And there's still little cringy moments here and there, looking back at things, and I'm like, oh, I'm not sure that was the best sentence, but all of life is not revision. All of life is not going back over the same stuff again and again and again. Eventually, I was like, this is what I can do. I want to get a book out, and even if it's not the greatest book, that means I can get better with time. I've always been afraid of, or very confused by, not afraid of, but very confused by works like Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, because a lot of people look at that and say, like, that's the best book. You know, it's like his first book, and then everything's downhill from there. I don't really see how that's possible. I think it's kind of true from what I've read of Orson Scott Card. I finished the Ender's Game Quintet, the second one in the timeline of, if you go 1 through 5, because there's the first 4 published in 2014. He inserted one between Ender's Game and Speaker for the Dead. That book kind of sucks. I don't know why, because he's had that many more years. Like, he published Ender's Game in the mid-'80s. If he writes one in 2014, he should have decades more of experience and decades more of listening to editors and getting feedback and knowing how to improve his work. But it's not better. It's definitely not a better book than any of the others, even Children of the Mind, which in itself kind of sucked. So I'm hoping that by dedicating myself to my own writing habits, that I will be able to make improved works over time, that each book will be better than the last. And considering the amount that I already have drafted, I really hope that's true, because I think the story gets better as it goes on. Dallin says, have you found it true that you have to read to write? Do you recommend trying to write about without consuming much literature? The first book I wrote without, like, I wrote the bulk of the first draft without really being a reader. Most of my original inspiration comes from playing video games and watching TV shows and anime and action cartoons, DC and Marvel cartoons, and the older DC and Marvel movies before the MCU started and stuff like that. Because it started around the time my first book came out. So a lot of those things were more my influences, and I'd kind of started reading a little Harry Potter, and I read like the Star Wars Jedi Apprentice series when I was really young, but I got really bored of those because video games were more my speed, I guess. It didn't require as much of my attention or effort, I suppose, because I didn't really try to beat all of the games. So I think when I started writing, and the quality of what I got out of it for not being a writer, I wrote the storyline, the plot that I wanted to write. And that's what I accomplished, and I'm not ashamed of my first book. I know it's lower quality than what it deserves to be, than what I could have done had I had more experience. But consuming literature, of a variety of kinds, and especially the type that you're trying to write, I think is essential, because there's two sides to writing. There's the there's the piece in concept, and there's the piece in practice, I guess. Like, Stephen King is really good at writing a story that is excellent in practice. The act of reading Stephen King is incredible. Just sitting down and reading his stuff, even though he writes really long stuff and a lot of stuff that not a lot of people might be interested in, he knows how to compose a sentence that keeps you reading, that is invigorating to read. The act of reading it itself is good because he's so good at writing the sentences. He knows the word choices, and he knows how to create interesting dialogue. Even if it doesn't sound authentic, it at least sounds interesting. So, in that sense, Stephen King is a really good example of one style of writing. And then there's other people who are completely the opposite, who they want something that is not as practical for the reader, but is more so entertainment for the theater of the mind as a concept. And so I think the best is a merge of both. So it's better to have a good understanding of the flow of reading. I really hate using the term flow when it comes to reading or writing, but it's a thing. The composition of a sentence does matter. The positioning of sentences in their order in a paragraph does matter. Stephen King himself says in the book On Writing, he says that the basic unit of a story is not the sentence, it's actually the paragraph, because the paragraph organizes the thought process that the person is supposed to have. The paragraph is the idea, not the sentence. The sentence is just a portion of the idea. The paragraph is the whole idea. So in that sense, there is a very valuable point to consuming a lot of literature, to reading a lot, to understand better how to write. And a lot of the people who are going to read your work are probably going to be people who've been reading their whole lives. There's not a lot of people who don't have a reading habit from a younger age and develop one as they get older. Most of them had a reading habit and either get back into it or it just never goes away. And so those are reader people. So they're going to be sensitive to, like, how does it feel in terms of pacing? How does it feel in terms of sentence organization? Maybe the person is a little too wordy, and that's a term I don't like a lot because people use it to criticize my stuff a lot, and I'm not exactly sure what they mean. I've still got a lot to learn. I'm not going to call myself an expert, but honestly, one of the most fun parts of writing is trying to do exactly what Stephen King says and make the written word as invigorating to read as possible. Just trying to see if anything jumps out at me looking at it. Well, the way dialogue is organized, if you really study people like Ernest Hemingway and you pay attention to the way that they do dialogue, you can make dialogue far more interesting simply by having already studied and known a lot about way things are organized on a page. Like, I don't know if this is going to be backwards on there, but like a single written section or a piece of dialogue can be one line and then move on to the next. You don't necessarily need a dialogue tag. We don't need to know every time the person who is talking, especially if it's just a back and forth between two people. Context clues can go a long way. People are smart, and it's important not to insult your reader and try to explain every little thing and leave in every bit of detail that you think is important. Sometimes there's more being said by what you don't say. It's one of those, paradoxes that people mention a lot that a lot of people don't understand. I didn't understand it for a very long time, but it's true. You can pay attention to the way other people have written. The more that you read other literature, other fantasy novels, sci-fi novels, nonfiction, historical fiction, instruction manuals, honestly, just paying attention to the way they do things, even sports broadcasts, the way that they cover, second by second what's happening right in front of them, the more you have experience in the way that all of these things are being said or written, the more adaptable you can be to convey your ideas. Straight prose is a lot more varied than people think, because you can write a very basic story that doesn't have a lot of imagination to it. It doesn't really strike up a lot of imagery. It's still a block of text. Or you can have like an instruction manual. You could write like something's an instruction manual and you're just describing the way everything looks all the time, and you're just focusing on like, this needs to go here and that sort of thing. Instruction manual is a weird example. I don't know why I picked that, but that's what I mean. An instruction manual is meant to be strictly descriptive of what something is and how it works. Sometimes you want to talk about how a character feels, and you can't talk about it in the same way. Because sometimes, you finish a sentence and you say, he was angry, or he was mad. No one understands what that means. Like, you read the words and you're like, okay, the character was mad, but you don't feel it. You don't feel it in the same way when you're reading a character talking about, like, the heat and their clenched palm they didn't realize was clenched at their side. That's more of a sign that someone's angry. That's stuff that I didn't learn until I had read more literature. I think I'm an exception to the rule that I mentioned earlier, where I wasn't really a reader until I got older, until I decided on a whim to read through Harry Potter's 1 through 6 between the release of 6 and 7, and then I got 7 when it was brand new. I wanted to write the whole time. There's plenty of other arts I might pursue, but writing is the one that comes most naturally. I'm not a good artist, I'm not a good musician, but writing is something that I've developed a passion for because I realized it's something that I do enjoy. I do enjoy reading, but I also, if I'm not actively talking to someone, I spend half of my time in my head imagining an imaginary world. So this comes out of that. This is born from my brain, born from my head, because the ideas don't stop. The characters don't stop. The inspiration doesn't stop. It's constantly flowing out of me, and I have a much worse time if I'm not able to write it down. And writing has helped me understand how, or reading more, studying literature better has helped me understand how to do that. I have to hop off here, but thank you so much. Nice to hear you speak. Feel free to send me an Amazon link. Will do, Dallin. Thanks for being on here. I think for the moment, unless someone else has a question, I was just going to read the prologue on here, the overture, because I like to use theatrical terms instead of chapters and prologues. Hand deliver the book to me and spend a weekend at my place. Go see sights in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I'd love to see the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I saw it from the distance once, but it's a bit of a drive. It's not really worth it to sell a book for the gas to drive from Wisconsin to Ohio. Okay, I will read it. So this is the overture, so not the beginning of the book, but like the pre-beginning. It focuses on a different main character that kind of sets the tone for everything. It is called The Coronation. A silver horse streaked with two riders. A silver horse with two riders streaked through a trail of dividing fields of shriveled brown grass. The shiver of late winter numbed the riders. Wow, I am having a tough time reading. Let me slow down. I'll start over. A silver horse with two riders streaked through a trail dividing fields of shriveled brown grass. The shiver of late winter numbed the riders, but didn't slow them down. Magillo Phiron and his father's attendant rode towards Silver Rock Castle, because today Magillo would become king. His father, King Stam, had just died at sea. The prince stowed away on the same ship, but survived thanks to his father's attendant and his ice magic. Being an only child, Magillo had to be crowned as soon as possible. They were on their third horse since the ship went down 2 days ago. Their steeds' hooves plowed through dry leaves that rolled along the ground. Silver Rock rose out of the horizon as they crested the last hill and looked down into the valley. It was the capital and largest city in Fyron. Inside its stone outer wall lay a small city, filled with families, merchants, blacksmiths, a collection of embassies, and more than a few soldiers' barracks. Their cottages and huts huddled close to one another as if to hide from the cold wind. Crooked cobbled roads ran through the city like dried straw cast out on stone. In the middle of the city sat Silver Rock Castle itself, old and faded. It looked like little more than a large stone building, if not for the tower in the center that reached high enough to be seen for miles around. With just a peek over the attendant's side, Magillo knew they were almost there. The priests would coronate him there and present him from one of the balconies to the city, following news of the king's death. Sure, he could warm up beside the crackling hearths inside, but any hint of eagerness soured into anxiety. The ceremony scared him. He liked so few people as it was, but now people would be his only business. On fresh horses, 2 more riders caught up to Magillo's steed. They passed him and rode ahead, bearing pennants of the royal convoy. The city gates admitted all 3 horses, and together they spread into the narrow roads. The citizens stood quiet, watching the party gallop through the streets. Were they already looking at me as their king? Magillo had to wonder. The castle itself stood like the face of a dirty glacier. Magillo saw painters like small brown beetles crawl across the castle walls on scaffolds, refreshing the exterior. Only the tower in the middle was not painted. It remained the color of the natural gray-tan stone that it was made from. Magillo looked to the top, eyeing the lowest balcony. Lookouts placed at small wood-framed towers sounded bells to alert the castle that the royal party had returned. The lead horse of the royal riders waved a green flag, a sign of victory. It was true. They had repelled the boldest naval attack Fyron faced in generations, but the weight in Magillo's chest felt like defeat. "What's happened?" a young guard said to the attendant as they walked together to help Magillo down off the horse. "Where is his majesty?" "You're holding him," the attendant said, and dismounted. "Master Polaris, where is King Stam?" "It's a green flag, Vetrus," Polaris said. "Be careful. Be grateful." He removed his cloak and another guard took it from him. "King Stam is dead. Ready the priests for the coronation immediately." "Of course, Master Polaris." Vetrus put his hand on the prince's back and led him inside the castle. A wave of warm air passed over him. "I must alert the priests." He knelt down on one arm. Whoa, is that this page? No, hold on. A wave of warm air passed over them. "I must alert the priests." He knelt down on one armored knee and bowed his head. "I'm so sorry, Your Highness. Nobody expected this." Why did he need to cry? It wasn't his father that just died. It was mine, Magillo thought. Mom would cry too, but not for Stam. She never cried for his father, even with his declining health over the last 5 years. She cried about Magillo all the time, though. Sometimes he felt the sight of him was sorrowful for her, but she never withheld any ounce of affection. She would shower him with tear-wet kisses all the time. Maybe it was one of those things he wouldn't understand until he was older. The guard named Vetrus left, and a priest in a white robe with a golden circlet on his head came to greet Magillo. Without a word, they went for the stairs. It was a long climb, and his thighs were already saddle-sore. He held back the grimace the rubbing pain brought to his face and pressed on. Zach. Wave. The unpolished stone was chilly on Magillo's legs. The coronation gown he had to wear only went down as far as his upper knee. 12 stories high in the meditation tower, he worked to recover his breath lost over the 108 steps up. A few windswept tears rolled down his cheeks and fell onto the interlocked fingers he held over his heart. The one beam of light coming through the window in the rock walls of the castle tower brightened, revealing half of a woman's face through a black veil. It was the face of his mother, and she spoke with a trembling throat. Magelo, you can't cry forever. Look at me. You knew this day would come. It's impressive the king lived as long as he did. She embraced him high on his shoulders, soaking some tears into her black dress. You know what happens next, right? I know. His voice resisted the heaves of weeping. But you don't have to do it. Since you aren't 18, you can leave. The kingdom of Ika has schools and plenty of friends for you to make. You'll be safe there, I guarantee it. I won't think any less of you. You're talking about exile. Magelo's hands separated so he could adjust the part in his hair. I won't think any less of my miracle child. The people want their king. The crown is awful heavy, Magelo's mother held his hand between her thin, pale fingers. I can handle it. I'm not just a boy anymore. As he stood up, the shoulder seams of his coronation gown trailed unevenly down the sides of his arms. His knees shook like he was carrying a boulder on his back. Magelo, you're just a boy. I'm not even sure the crown will fit on your head for the ceremony. You've always been so brave, but you don't need to be brave right now. You have options. If you open up those doors, you can't turn back. I know you love your father, but you want to make him proud. I know, but it's still your choice. This isn't about Dad, Magelo said. This isn't about you either. He had as much success making the starchy gown fit as someone trying to hold water onto a rock. I have to stop him. My baby, she whispered like her son had just slapped her in the face. I need to make this right. If nobody stops the Emperor, he'll just keep killing people. Let me take the throne as regent until you're old enough. There are still many nations that will pay tribute to a queen. When you're old enough, I can pardon you and you can come back. The war may be over by then. She held out her arm as he walked around the altar between them. She retracted her hand, but he saw the open sore before her sleeve covered it back up. I'm not going to run away, he said, just as he wrapped his fingers around the wrought iron doorknob to the coronation room. They're inside, right? They'll be able to show me to the balcony? He asked over his shoulder. The more he tried to steady his hand, the more noise the knob made as it jittered in its socket. Yes, she twisted her neck, dreading the sight of the knob turning. He could kill you, too. The Emperor has lived this long. He isn't going to give up. Magelo thought of the fields of Ika he rode through just yesterday, the sweet taste of its clear spring water. He remembered the look of his father's only open eye 2 days earlier. He never saw one eye filled with so much purpose, life, and caring. If his father could move both of his arms, he would have lifted Magelo up and given him a kiss on the cheek before he told his attendants to lock him in the back of the ship. He would have given some final fatherly wisdom. If his voice could overcome the clamor of war. Just 2 days ago, Magelo's father was alive. Yesterday morning, the king's soldiers and aura magic repelled the Empire. It wasn't that long ago at all. He never imagined he would be here, standing in front of this door. At least not this soon. Magelo's hand lost all heat as he held it on the doorknob. It felt wet, but he knew the moisture came from his own palm. Too many people have given their lives to end this war. I'd do the same if I knew I could end it. We shouldn't have to live in fear anymore. You don't need to. His mother's voice sounded like it was coming through the door already. Just come here. Magelo couldn't see it, but he knew she was waving to him. Waving him toward her for a frail, uneven hug. I have to do the right thing. The doorknob remained in place. His mother sat silent. The gray clouds stayed as still as mountains. The wind stopped, and he wiped droplets as cold as seawater, from his forehead. If he let go, he could live in Ika. That eastern land promised sun-warmed hair and long pasture afternoons. The grass would be alive under his feet, unlike the cobbled floor where he stood. Magelo's fingers creaked at the joints lightly when he pulled his hand off the knob. I'm so scared. The words probably didn't make it past his lips. His blood stopped the moment his hand left contact with the door. But I will do whatever I can. The knob clattered and gave way. Magelo shoved the wooden doors open and felt the air come alive. A slight breeze, like the leading hand of a father, guided him into the coronation room. King Magillophyron stood to his full height. On the 12th anniversary of his father's death, he returned to that same balcony. A father, a foot and a half taller, and 2 lifetimes wiser. Wearing polished yet experienced light steel armor, Magillo pulled the clasps of his thick cape close together to keep himself warm. He gripped the edge of the balcony, breathed in the breeze of an approaching spring, and spoke up. "Polaris, Nova, come here." Polaris arrived first and stood stiff as a post, holding a salute. His hair was gray-white now, and he wore a white, sashed garb of a royal attendant. "What is it, Your Majesty?" Nova hopped up to the king's other side a second later. Nova stood a full foot of rippling bulk, taller than the others. His long auburn hair glistened like oily fire as the daylight highlighted the streaks of bright red in his frizzy locks. He saluted, then rested both of his hands on his belt. "Magillo, we're here for you." Nova cleared his throat. "It's been a year since I made you a general commander. That makes you member of the senior war council." King Magillo turned, and both of his men stepped sideways to face him. "I have a decision to make, and I wanted to talk it over with the only council members I trust here at the castle." The wind picked up, carrying flurries. "Imperial forces are closing in on Kilaba to the north. That's the furthest stretch of the Protectorate now. I trust Captain Jadrian, but he's only been there for a month, and can't fortify the position in time if the Empire attacks now. Worse yet, that may be a distraction. The Emperor could move to invade our lands using a route through the Adwell region. It's like trying to sleep with a short blanket. Every trooper we move from one front weakens the other. I must ask the 2 of you then, which should we defend?" Magillo scratched the stubble on his chin. "Your Majesty," General Nova began, "Kilaba is a prized ally and an important member of the Protectorate. Our relationship is already strained after last year's attacks. We should send all available forces to Kilaba. It would boost confidence in the citizens and morale in the soldiers." "The general's sentiments are stirring, but I must disagree." Polaris stepped closer to the king. "Kilaba, sitting in a mountain pass, serves as a bottleneck to the Protectorate. Even if it fell to an attack, it's a day or two's travel for a laden army to reach the next city or province. Captain Jadrian is a strong leader, and it would take a week in prime weather to get troops there. The journey to Adwell is a day or two, downhill, and boasts untapped hunting and gathering grounds to support forces their way west. The decision is clear. We should mobilize forces toward the swamps in Adwell and set up our defenses before the thaw. If we can trap the Orcanians in the mud, we can cripple them, no matter how big the army." "Right, and let Kilaba get trampled in the process." General Nova rested his hand on his belt buckle. "Your Majesty, if we can't protect our strongest ally, we will lose tribute money and volunteer soldiers from the Protectorate territories. We will have to fight this war at these very walls." Nova leaned on the stone of the battlement in front of him. "We can't stand by and watch that light go out. The smart choice right now, Your Majesty, is for us to pick our battles as wisely as we can." Polaris adjusted his collar. "We can talk about looking at the big picture all we want, but we must do what we can now. If we do nothing, we are as good as burnt out in the eyes of the rest of the world. How will it look if we send all our forces to Kilaba and they arrive late, or worse, get there and fail anyway?" "At least we would have tried to live up to our commitment." Nova looked down his nose at Polaris. "The question isn't about whether or not we take losses. That's not how war works." Polaris ignored Nova's scoff that could have been mistaken for a choke. "It's about which losses to take. We ran out of acceptable losses some time ago." "Acceptable losses? Each battle, win or lose, is life lost. No loss is acceptable. And yet, we must accept them. If we lose Kilaba, we can keep our own borders secure, play to our strengths, and maintain some internal integrity, even if the other nations look down on us." Polaris huffed out his nose. "The choice is yours, Your Majesty. I doubt any further advice would be beneficial." "We're too close to the issue to think clearly, apparently." Nova folded his arms. Nova folded his arms after raking his fingers through the front of his tangled hair. "We're all too close," Magillo said, reaching a hand to his brow, as though he were trying to prevent a stack of books from falling off his head. "That's the problem. We can't look at this from a better angle than the one the Emperor has forced on us. I need to think about it alone. Both of you are dismissed." Magillo didn't watch them leave. He just heard the door to the inside hall shut. Tilting the battle crown back off his forehead, he looked over the castle town. The streets cleared when the flurries turned into sharp rain. He only heard his own breathing and watched the fog of it vanish into the wind. "How am I supposed to do this?" he asked his father, hoping his words could somehow reach the heavens. "We're done. This is our last stand. I can't see any way out. Didn't the old kings promise 4 angels?" He turned his eyes to the sheet of smoky clouds. "Is this the end?" The guard captain, Vetrus, came through the door in time to catch a little of the king's prayer. "Not yet, your majesty." "I wish I had that hope," Magillo ended his brooding. "I'm not talking about hope, your majesty. The old kings promised a king would reign in Fyron until the end of the world." Vetrus waited, shrugged, and left. "I doubt 4,000 angels could turn things back now," Magillo said to the sky again. In the rain he heard another sound. A low pop or bang, one that shook the whole air and ground like a word spoken by the heavens themselves, but in a language he didn't know. It rang out soft but deep, as though it moved his soul for a split second. The echo died in the rain a moment later, but had done its job. The sound came from the east, toward the swamps. That's Prologue. The rest of the book is divided into scenes and parts, because I like to present it theatrically. There are, let me make sure, 5 scenes and an epilogue at the end. And some of the scenes are longer, some are shorter, some have like just a couple parts, and some have more. The parts are closer to chapter length in terms of a normal chapter book, but they're still a little short. So it might read a little more like a thriller, like a Dan Brown or a, I don't know, Thomas, I'm trying to think of the name, the guy who wrote Silence of the Lambs. Hey, Cheryl. Awesome, it's great to hear from you, the author. Read it. Yeah. I'll eventually probably read the whole thing, even if I'm reading it just piece by piece on live streams like this. I'd love to get my voice out for the whole thing, and maybe I'll eventually hire someone to read it professionally as an audiobook. And if I can get that far, I might even just be able to go to Amazon, which everything's been done through Amazon. The ebook and the physical book have all been Amazon anyway. Might end up on Audible. If so, hopefully I can get someone famous to do it, like, I don't know. I don't know if there's anyone I'd be able to like afford, or if that's something Amazon would cover, if there's enough interest in the book. But if you want an audiobook, please buy my book. Tell your friends about it. I can tell as many people as I know, but it's not gonna make that much of a difference unless the people I tell their friends. Not trying to say that like it's a multi-level marketing thing. I'm trying to say that because it's true. Books get their best exposure through word of mouth. You don't really see commercials for books. You don't really see a lot of ads on the internet for books unless it's just like the completed set. That's when those books are already famous. I might try the audiobook. I might also want some voice acting lessons before I do that. Well, and even then I could do that just on my own, and eventually, if it's not a compete problem with Amazon, maybe have a professionally done version later on. I know this is weird to say, but like, I've always thought Markiplier's voice was really nice. If you don't know who that is, he's an internet celebrity on YouTube. I don't know if he would do a whole audiobook, but if he did, that would be incredible. If not him, maybe a professional voice actor like Matt Mercer or Taliesin Jaffe or Liam O'Brien. Those would be my top 3 picks for voice actors, probably. Yeah, I don't know. Someone who would... Hi, Kyle. Been a long time. Wave button. It's been a long time since... I don't know what I was about to say. But, yeah. Tell your friends, the book is out. $12 on Matt Mercer. Matt Mercer, Bobby. Matt Mercer would be a huge nerd moment for me to be able to have the Dungeon Master of Critical Role and the voice of Kiritsugu Emiya and a lot of my favorite video game and anime characters end up reading the whole book. He is a professional voice actor, so it might be possible. I know he's very busy with Critical Role and playing Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, that's good to know, Bobby. Yeah. I'll read it on my own through streams, bit by bit or piece by piece, and I might even stream myself reading to everyone the some of the next book after as well. Not right away, but eventually. That way people can kind of hear what's coming and give me some feedback in a much wider way. It might be something that I feel like is more done than the rest, just so I don't read it and then it comes out in the book and it's completely different. Unless people hate it, then then it will be a lot to change. But as far as time you might invest in this book, see, in print, the end of the epilogue, which I recommend reading, ends at 296 pages. So that's basically 300 pages. It is 50, it's between 52 and 55,000 words. So it is by a few thousand words, a literal novel. It's not incredibly thick. More will come with time. The second book, I would love to have published before the end of this year, at least on ebook, and then hopefully in print shortly thereafter, because I feel like a lot more people are going to buy the paperback. If you feel that that's true, you can prove it by buying it in paperback. And when that is done, I have first drafts of the next 2 books already done. Just first drafts, though, so very early in the creative process. I can tell you right now, if I were to go back through them, about half of each of those books, well, at least half of the third book, would get completely overhauled. And I am not finished with the first draft of the 5th book, but the 5th book will be enormous by comparison. Let's see, if this is about 50,000 words, or a little more than 50,000 words, I have easily over 200,000 words in that book. So it's probably going to be at least this thick. And honestly, yeah, I have about 220,000 words in it. That's about half of the length of the Game of Thrones, the first book in A Song of Ice and Fire. That's about 400,000. So I think it's going to be about there, because at 200-some thousand words, I'm maybe half done with that story. It's going to be ridiculously huge for me. Anyway, by the time it's done. I've never even read a book that big. I'm a fan of Brandon Sanderson, and he does 400 to 500,000 word books. I haven't finished any of them. I have them. I have a lot of books, especially by him, that I have not finished yet, but hope to get to them in time. The Wheel of Time is a bit of a distraction. When I get done reading that, I want to finish Lord of the Rings, so I can have the maximum nerd cred that one ought to have as a fantasy writer. I don't know, I'm halfway through Two Towers in Rohan, Edoras. I've been reading that since freshman year of high school. That's taken a long time to read through, but it's beautiful to read. Some of the best imagery I've ever read in any book ever. Probably the best imagery. Lord of the Rings is no joke. And definitely a big inspiration for me, as it is for pretty much every fantasy writer. Don't know. It's been good to read. Good to have people jump on here. If anyone has questions for me, go ahead and ask. I'd love to answer them live, because at this point I'm not really sure what else I want to say. Other than, obviously, like I've been saying, hi, Jackie. Wave. I'm not in the habit of doing this very often, but I kind of want to do it more, because I hope it'll drive some conversions for me, and maybe with Christmas money and, tax returns coming soon, people out there can afford a book. And I know times are tough for everyone, and the economy is in the garbage, probably worse than it's been in my entire life. But that's why I'm only charging $12 for the paperback. Shipping might be more. I believe since it's being printed by Amazon, it should be Prime eligible. So if you have Amazon Prime, you should be able to just get it shipped free. Totally help get more people on your hype. Well, thanks. I appreciate it. Hope to have a Ohio contingent of fans. I'm actually going to my library later today to donate a couple books, a couple copies of my book, and hopefully they'll be able to put up like some kind of display at the library. I mean, like, local author Nathan Orgel. You don't know him, but here's his book. He keeps to himself, but wants to, be known for books anyway. That's get that going for you out here. Yeah, if you buy an extra copy or whatever, or even if I mailed you, if I see that you've bought a copy, I might mail you one at my own cost, like just for free, if you want to put it into a library where you live. And I mean, for anyone who hears that same thing, if you live, not in the where Bobby lives area, or in Oshkosh area, I'll probably bring one to the Appleton Public Library. Although I've heard that Appleton's public library is moving or getting demolished and occupying the old Best Buy. I saw that earlier today. But newspapers around will also be getting it too. Twitter and TikTok. Let's talk later on. Game plan. I'll charge you. Yeah. TikTok's new for me. I mean, it's only been around a couple of years, so nice to have you here, Aunt Cheryl. Thanks for watching. Yeah, some newspapers, maybe some booktubers. Yeah, if there's people on TikTok who read books and review them, I would love to send a copy to them. If anyone knows any names of people like that. I know on YouTube there's a whole community called BookTube, where there's people who just read books and review them, and that's their living. They make their whole living reading books and reviewing books and writing books on YouTube and talking about books and interviewing people. That would be another step for me. I'd have to order some more physical copies in order to send it out to a bunch of people, but that's kind of my game plan for now. My mouth is getting really dry. I've been doing a lot of talking. And I have other things to do with my day. It's been nice to stream and reach out to the 5 or 6 people that have viewed so far. I appreciate every single one of you. If you're watching this later on, thanks for doing that. Please check out Withered Kingdom on Amazon. It's available as a Kindle ebook, and you can get the Kindle app on almost any device, even a PC. And then the paperback is available on Amazon or through Amazon shopping apps, $12. Usually I'm thinking is going to be free shipping if you have Amazon Prime. But that's me signing off. I think it's just Bobby on now, so bye. See everyone later when I do another live stream or if I see you in person.